The shocking downfall of Rolex. Rolex didn't fall off a cliff. It began to slip quietly, one signal at a time. No headlines at first, just data points that didn't line up with the legend. Rolex had once stood above all, flawless in reputation, flawless in demand. But lately, something feels different. And the world is starting to notice cracks where none existed before. Surveys show search interest for Rolex alternatives climbed more than 40% year over year, while younger buyers increasingly favored transparency, value, and access over legacy prestige. Rolex still produces millions of watches annually, but perception, its most valuable asset, proved harder to control than supply. The aura, the inevitability, the untouchable status, it's not what it was. So today, we'll explore the subtle signs of strain behind the crown, the shifts in the world of Rolex, and why collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts are starting to wonder if the legend is beginning to change without anyone making a sound. Let's get down to business. The most wanted, before the fall. Rolex did not become a famous luxury brand by accident. Its rise took place over more than a century, shaped by clear goals, bold ideas, and real innovation. The company began as a small watchmaker in the early 1900s and grew into a brand known all over the world. This rise was powered by technical breakthroughs, smart business decisions, and a growing reputation for precision and quality that few others could match. Understanding how Rolex became great helps explain why its later challenges felt so shocking to many people. The story begins with Hans Wilsdorf, the founder of what would become Rolex. In 1905, the company began by importing Swiss-made movements and putting them into watch cases made in England. But Wilsdorf had a bigger vision than simply selling watches. He believed that wristwatches could be as precise and reliable as pocket watches, which were the accepted standard at the time. Wristwatches were still new, and many people thought of them as decorative rather than serious timekeeping tools. Wilsdorf wanted to change that. In 1908, Wilsdorf registered the name Rolex and made it the official brand name of the watches his company made. He chose Rolex because it was short, easy to pronounce in any language, and looked balanced on a watch dial, qualities that helped the name stick around the world. The early years were not simple. Rolex watches still struggled to compete with the precision of established brands, but Wilsdorf was determined. He believed that if he could make a wristwatch as accurate as the best pocket watches, people would trust and value it. A major turning point for Rolex came in 1910, when a Rolex wristwatch became the first wristwatch in the world to receive the Swiss Certificate of Chronometric Precision from the official watch rating center in Bienne, Switzerland. This certificate proved that a Rolex watch could keep time as accurately as the best mechanical watches of the era. Only a few years later, in 1914, another Rolex watch was awarded a Class A precision certificate by the Kew Observatory in England, a distinction usually given only to marine chronometers, the highly precise clocks used on ships. These achievements convinced people that Rolex was not just making pretty watches, it was making truly reliable instruments. Rolex's commitment to innovation did not stop with precision certificates. In 1926, the company introduced the Rolex Oyster, the first wristwatch with a truly waterproof case. The Oyster case sealed the movement inside a tightly closed shell that kept out water and dust, making it more durable and dependable in everyday life. Rolex proved the Oyster's toughness in dramatic fashion. In 1927, British endurance swimmer Mercedes Gleitze wore a Rolex Oyster while swimming across the English Channel. The watch continued keeping accurate time after more than 10 hours in the cold water, earning Rolex worldwide recognition for reliability, a breakthrough moment that helped place the brand in the minds of adventurers, athletes, and professionals alike. Rolex did not stop innovating. In 1931, the company developed the perpetual movement, a self-winding mechanism powered by the wearer's wrist motion. Before this invention, people had to wind their watches by hand every day. The perpetual movement changed that, making Rolex watches easier to use and more practical for everyday wear. This technology would become the foundation for many future models and helped establish Rolex as a pioneer in automatic watchmaking. The decades after World War II saw Rolex expand both its technology and its product range. In 1945, Rolex introduced the Datejust, the first wristwatch with a date window that changed automatically at midnight. This simple but elegant feature became a symbol of everyday luxury. In the years that followed, Rolex continued to release iconic models that attracted new groups of buyers. The Submariner, launched in 1953, became known as the first true diving watch with strong water resistance and rugged design. The GMT Master, debuted in 1955, was created for pilots and world travelers who needed to track multiple time zones. Each of these models did not just serve practical purposes. They captured people's imagination and helped Rolex build a reputation for creating watches that could meet the demands of both professionals and style-minded. Rolex also made smart moves beyond its technical achievements. The company understood early that brand perception matters. Rolex watches began appearing on the wrists of explorers, athletes, world leaders, and celebrities, people whose success or prestige helped elevate the brand in public perception. Rolex associated itself with sports, scientific exploration, and elite cultural events, creating an image that Rolex watches were not merely accessories, but symbols of achievement and success. Another major strategic decision in Rolex's rise was to build a global network of authorized dealers. Instead of relying on department stores or small shops with mixed brands, Rolex trained selected dealers to present the watches with the care and exclusivity they deserved. This helped Rolex control the customer experience, pricing, and brand image in every country. As demand grew, authorized dealers became key points where luxury buyers could learn about Rolex, feel the watches in person, and begin the process of owning one. By the late 20th century, Rolex had become more than a watchmaker. It was a status symbol. People around the world saw Rolex watches as marks of personal success, professional achievement, and timeless style. By the time the company entered the 21st century, it had already established itself as the fixed standard in luxury mechanical watches, a status that would define the next decades of its success and ultimately shape the dramatic shifts that followed. But little did the brand know that there was setback waiting ahead: declining secondary market leadership. The world once saw Rolex watches as symbols of wealth and success, icons that almost never lost value. People talked about them like they were rare treasures that would always go up in price. But recently, that belief has changed in important ways. In the last few years, the demand for Rolex watches, especially on the secondary market, has shown signs of weakening. What once seemed like a forever boom has started to show cracks. For many years, Rolex held a commanding position in the world of luxury watches. In the secondary market, that means watches being sold after their first owner. Rolex once had a market share of around 50% by transaction volume on major platforms. Buyers would compete to buy these watches not just to wear them, but to sell them later for more money. Rolex watches had become a kind of hybrid between a fashion item and an investment, but that share didn't stay at 50%. By 2024, research showed that Rolex's share had dropped to about 34% of all secondary market transactions. This is still a large piece of the market, but it is much smaller than before and shows that other brands are gaining ground. One reason for this shift is price fatigue among buyers who once treated Rolex watches as instant profits. Between 2020 and 2022, many popular Rolex models saw secondary market prices soar by 80% to 200% above their retail prices. People believed the trend would continue forever, and excitement drove prices higher. But by mid-2024, analysts observed that prices for major models had declined between 25% from their peaks. This drop was still high compared to original retail prices, but the psychology of buying had changed. When people see that prices can fall, they stop rushing to buy immediately. They pause, hoping prices might drop further or become more stable. This hesitation slows down demand, meaning fewer buyers are willing to pay the high premiums they once did. Another important shift is seen in how the secondary market itself is changing. The strong grip Rolex once had on the pre-owned luxury watch market is loosening as competitors become more prominent. Omega, Cartier, and Patek Philippe, other respected luxury brands, have expanded their share of sales on secondary platforms. Cartier, in particular, doubled its market share from around 2.5% in 2 months and 20 to over 5% by the end of 2 years. Younger buyers are often attracted to different designs, styles, and even price levels that vary from traditional Rolex models. Some buyers are even choosing pre-owned watches first because they see better value there rather than new ones. This shift is paired with another trend. Wait times for popular Rolex models have shortened. A few years ago, buyers might wait many months or even years to get certain watches. Reports indicate that median wait times dropped significantly over time. For instance, Submariner waiting lists that once stretched to 105 days shortened to about 60 days, and the GMT Masters wait dropped from 180 days to 90 days. While not dramatic compared to ordinary products, these changes hint that supply is catching up with or exceeding demand, making Rolex watches more available than they were during the peak. At the same time, Rolex launched its certified pre-owned CPO program in 2023. This program lets authorized dealers sell authenticated, used Rolex watches with official backing. On one hand, this could be seen as a positive step, giving buyers more confidence when they buy used watches. On the other hand, it also means that many Rolex watches are no longer only available through unofficial channels or at extreme premiums. There are deeper reasons for these changes beyond market share and prices. Consumer behavior itself is evolving. During the pandemic years, Rolex watches became highly desirable, partly because people with extra savings and limited travel started investing in luxury goods. When the world reopened and the broader economy changed, with inflation, rising interest rates, and shifting lifestyles, some buyers became more cautious. The shift in generation and values also plays a role. Younger buyers, including Gen Z and millennials, often have different priorities than older collectors. Some surveys show that younger people prefer simplicity, sustainability, or uniqueness over big brand names and high-price items. Many younger buyers choose pre-owned watches not because they expect huge investment returns, but because they want craftsmanship and style within more affordable price ranges. Another factor comes from alternative investments and assets. In recent years, cryptocurrencies, real estate, and other modern investment vehicles attracted attention and capital that might once have gone into traditional collectible markets like luxury watches. As some of these newer markets matured, luxury watch demand adjusted as well. In simpler terms, when people have many ways to invest their money, they might not choose a high-end watch as the first option, especially if economic conditions seem uncertain. All these trends contribute to a broader shift. Rolex is gradually failing as a brand. Although it still leads many parts of the market and continues to represent craftsmanship and heritage. But the idea that Rolex demand would always rise and prices would always climb has been challenged. The secondary market that once gave Rolex watches near guaranteed value growth is not as simple or strong as it once was. But how has Rolex managed to survive the slowdown during recent years? Rolex in a tough economy. Rolex is one of the most famous luxury watch brands in the world, known for excellence and precision. But even icons like Rolex do not exist in a world without economic forces. The global economy, changes in trade rules, currency values, production costs, and market demand all shape how Rolex and other Swiss luxury watchmakers operate. In recent years, Rolex has faced real pressures from these economic forces, affecting both its retail business and the overall industry in which it plays a leading role. One of the most concrete examples of economic pressure on Rolex comes from the international trade environment. In the United States, Swiss watches, including Rolex, were hit with high tariffs, sometimes reaching as much as 39% on imports. These tariffs added significant extra costs for Swiss watchmakers when selling in one of their most important markets. Although negotiations in early 2026 have cut those tariffs back to around 15%, the situation still shows how unpredictable trade policies can affect the industry. Higher tariffs mean higher prices for customers and compressed profit margins for brands and retailers alike. However, retailers that sell Rolex watches have not been immune to these pressures. For example, the British luxury watch and jewelry retailer Watches of Switzerland Group reported that rising tariffs on Swiss imports were expected to hit profit margins. Even though the company posted record revenue thanks to demand for Rolex and other top brands, analysts warned that cost increases could force retailers to absorb some of the tariff costs rather than fully pass them on to buyers. This kind of cost squeeze makes it harder for retailers to maintain stable prices and healthy profits in a changing economic environment. According to recent industry data, Swiss watch exports declined in both volume and value in 2024 and into the following year. While Rolex's own production and export numbers remained relatively strong compared with many smaller brands, the overall reduction in Swiss watch volumes signals a cooling global demand for watches in a sector that was once growing rapidly after the pandemic. A detailed industry report pointed out that total export volumes fell by around 10% in 2024, with the number of watches shipped decreasing significantly. Part of this slowdown comes from currency effects. The Swiss franc strengthened against major currencies like the United States dollar over the past couple of years. A stronger franc makes exported goods more expensive for international buyers when converted to their local currencies. To stay competitive, Swiss watchmakers must either absorb the cost difference or raise their prices overseas. Higher prices can further dampen demand, especially during times when global consumers are more cautious about expensive purchases. Economic pressures also show up in how consumers behave. When people face rising living costs, inflation, or uncertainty about the future, they often delay or reduce spending on luxury items. A report on Swiss luxury Swiss watch exports described how buyers slowed their purchases amid broader economic concerns. In some months, in 2024, the number of watches exported actually fell, indicating that luxury spending was not growing as strongly as expected. Some markets that were once very strong for Swiss watches also weakened. For example, one industry analysis showed that shipments to China, a major luxury goods market, dropped sharply, contributing to overall export declines. China's slowdown in luxury spending rippled through the Swiss watch industry, and even leaders like Rolex could feel the impact because global retail performance is linked to demand from the biggest buyers. The slowdown has not hit all segments of the watch market equally. High-end watches, those costing very large amounts, continued to show relative strength and made up a larger percentage of the total value of exports, even as overall volumes declined. This suggests that while wealthier buyers still spend on premium watches, middle-range and lower-range segments have struggled more. Rolex has also had to contend with rising production and material costs. Luxury watches use precious metals like gold, and the price of gold itself rose sharply in recent years, adding to the cost of making premium watches. While Rolex did increase retail prices in some regions and for certain models to help offset these costs, this response places additional pressure on buyers and the retail market, particularly when consumers are already thinking carefully about expensive purchases. Retail challenges extend beyond price and export numbers. Some brands, including Rolex, face structural issues in how they distribute their watches. Rolex relies heavily on a network of authorized dealers rather than selling directly through brand-owned stores in many markets. While this preserves a sense of exclusivity for the brand and supports trusted relationships, it can also create complications if dealers feel squeezed by market uncertainty or rising costs. There are also broader industry trends that contribute to retail challenges. As buyers become more cautious, they sometimes turn to secondary markets or pre-owned channels instead of paying high new retail prices. While Rolex has developed a certified pre-owned CPO program to tap into that market in a controlled way, the existence of many resale options can create tension between new retail demand and the retail ecosystem for both new and used watches. Finally, the broader health of the Swiss watch industry affects how retailers plan for the future. Some industry groups have called on government support to help the sector, pointing out that manufacturing jobs and export-reliant businesses require stable conditions to thrive. A weakened industry environment can affect investment in marketing, store expansions, and dealer support programs that companies like Rolex depend on to reach customers effectively. Meanwhile, there's been a recent development that seems to be helping Rolex gain control, or not. Distributor and retailer friction. Rolex's relationship with its authorized dealers, the shops and retailers that sell new Rolex watches, has always been complex. For decades, Rolex relied on a large network of independent retailers around the world to bring its watches to customers. These dealers were carefully chosen, trained, and expected to present the brand at a very high level. But over recent years, friction and conflict have grown between Rolex and some of these partners. In the traditional Rolex model, authorized dealers worked as independent businesses. They bought watches from Rolex at wholesale and then sold them at the official retail prices set by the brand. They also provided service and customer care for Rolex owners in many markets. But recent years have seen many of these dealers pushed aside or losing their status as Rolex wants more control. According to recent reports, Rolex has been eliminating licenses for many independent boutiques, particularly in Germany, as the brand consolidates its retail network following the acquisition of multi-brand retailer Bucherer in 2023. This move signals a broader strategy to reduce reliance on small, independent retailers and shift toward more direct control over distribution. For some independent watch shops that depended on Rolex sales for a significant portion of their revenue, losing Rolex authorization is a major blow. Luxury watch dealers often depend on Rolex not just for watch sales but for foot traffic. A significant share of their annual revenue frequently comes from Rolex watches, so ending that partnership can hurt the business. Analysts have noted that some shops generate more than 30% of their top line from Rolex alone, with additional indirect revenue linked to the brand's presence. Alongside this reduction in dealer numbers, Rolex is also changing how watches are allocated to remaining dealers. In the past, dealers often kept wait lists of customers hoping to get high-demand models. But insiders described these lists as a kind of show, a way to make customers feel they had a chance, even though Rolex often limited how many watches were sent to each dealer. Some former authorized dealer employees described waitlists officially recorded in dealer systems, but the actual allocation of watches rarely followed those lists. This kind of frustration can strain dealer-brand relationships. Dealers do not want to lose customers who walk in expecting Rolex availability, and when the deliveries don't match expectations, dealers face tough conversations. Some dealers have reportedly been told by Rolex to be less afraid of selling to watch flippers, people who buy watches to resell them, because the strict avoidance of flippers made dealers too cautious. Dealers were so worried about losing supply that they ended up not selling to many genuine buyers. Rolex also faces friction from competition authorities over how it controls its dealer network. In France, for example, a regulatory body fined Rolex nearly €92 million for prohibiting its authorized retailers from selling Rolex watches online. French authorities ruled that Rolex's restrictions on online sales were overly restrictive of competition, especially during a time when online luxury sales have been growing rapidly. Rolex must now publish the decision and allow authorized retailers more freedom in how they market and sell online. This kind of regulatory challenge highlights the tension between Rolex's desire to tightly manage how its watches are sold and the realities of modern commerce. Dealers want flexibility and access to customers in new ways, including online channels, while Rolex has often restricted these options in pursuit of brand protection and price control. That conflict underscores just how different the priorities of a global brand and local retailers can be in today's market. Another layer of friction comes from service and support expectations. Rolex historically relied on its dealer partners to serve customers not only at the point of sale, but also for after-sales service and repairs. But changes in how Rolex manages service, including closures of some service centers and shifting service roles onto retailers, have caused uncertainty and occasional conflict. Reports indicate that Rolex has closed certain service centers, meaning that dealers must send watches further away for official repairs, or redirect owners to centralized locations rather than local centers. This can lead to delays and dissatisfaction that dealers may have to manage on the ground. At industry events like Dubai Watch Week, Rolex's CEO has emphasized that the brand will continue to rely on authorized retailers rather than rapidly expanding its own retail stores. He has argued that these close relationships help maintain quality customer engagement and loyalty. However, this position coexists with the brand's broader moves to reshape distribution, suggesting a balancing act between control and partnership. The dealer friction also reflects broader shifts in luxury retail. Many brands in the luxury sector are reassessing how they connect with customers in a world where online sales, authentic engagement, and brand control are increasingly important. Rolex's strong brand identity and premium positioning give it power over many independent dealers, but they also mean that the brand's decisions about distribution and sales strategy ripple outward, affecting the businesses that depend on Rolex for their livelihoods. Overall, the friction between Rolex and its authorized dealers shows a brand in transition, trying to maintain its legendary control over distribution while adapting to market pressures, new retail realities, and changing buyer behavior. This transition affects not only the economics of watch sales, but also the relationships that once defined how luxury watches reached customers around the world. However, Rolex has been in the game for so long, thanks to some traditional methods applied over the years. The Rolex strategy. For many years, people around the world thought of Rolex as the most desirable luxury watch brand. But in recent years, the way Rolex runs its brand and shapes its market has shifted. These strategic changes have both strengthened and challenged the brand in surprising ways. At the center of this story is how Rolex controls supply, creates scarcity, manages its image, and shifts its market strategy in a world where luxury tastes are evolving faster than ever before. Rolex's brand strategy relies on a very old-fashioned idea of luxury, exclusivity, and rarity. Instead of making huge volumes of watches to satisfy every demand, Rolex has almost always limited how many timepieces it puts into the market. Although the company may produce more than 1 million watches a year, this number is carefully calibrated so that demand always outstrips supply. Creating this kind of scarcity has helped Rolex preserve a reputation of high desirability and strong market value. Rolex's use of scarcity goes beyond just numbers. The brand controls how these watches are distributed worldwide, working with a network of carefully chosen, authorized dealers. Dealers receive only a limited number of pieces each year, and these are allocated to customers based on loyalty, purchase history, and other criteria. This means a person might need to build a relationship with a dealer over many visits before being offered a coveted model. It also means waiting lists and limited availability become part of the Rolex story, almost a rite of passage for serious buyers. This system reinforces Rolex's image as a luxury brand that cannot be rushed. But relying so heavily on controlled scarcity can also create frustration. As global demand for luxury goods grew during the pandemic, many buyers around the world found it harder and harder to get the models they wanted. Some even complained that scarcity felt artificially exaggerated by the brand and dealers to boost demand and hype. Such perceptions, whether accurate or not, change how people view Rolex's strategy. Rolex's pricing strategy is another part of how the brand tries to manage its market position. Instead of offering discounts or sales during slow periods, Rolex keeps its prices stable or adjusts them slowly over time. This approach is known as prestige pricing. It sends a signal that Rolex watches are not commodities that go on sale, but rare objects of value that should be paid for at full price. Customers learn to expect that prices will remain high and consistent, which supports the perception that owning a Rolex is not just about telling time. However, this focus on stability and scarcity can backfire when consumer preferences change or when global economic conditions shift. In a market where some people begin to see value in diversity, creativity, or new luxury experiences, strict scarcity can make a brand seem rigid or less flexible. Younger buyers, in particular, may look for products that feel accessible, connected to their lifestyles, or innovative in different ways. To support its brand image beyond scarcity and pricing, Rolex has also leaned heavily into heritage and sponsorships. The company partners with long-established cultural events like Wimbledon, the Masters Golf Tournament, and various yacht races. These associations connect Rolex to precision, achievement, and tradition. Instead of flashy advertisements or celebrity endorsements that change from season to season, Rolex's promotional approach is slow and steady, building recognition over years and decades rather than months. These partnerships help position Rolex watches not just as products, but as symbols tied to human achievement and history. The story they tell is less about trends or fashion and more about endurance, performance, and timeless relevance. But that same long-term storytelling can feel out of step with today's fast-changing media landscape, where brands often need to connect directly with customers on digital platforms, social media, and online communities to stay relevant. Rolex also expanded into the certified pre-owned CPO market as a way to extend its brand control into the secondary market. A certified pre-owned Rolex is authenticated and backed by Rolex or its partners, giving buyers more confidence when buying used watches. This strategy helps the brand maintain a presence even after a watch leaves the primary retail channel. But it also reflects a shift. Instead of leaving the resale market entirely to unofficial dealers, Rolex now seeks to shape that market too. Even as Rolex reinforces its heritage and scarcity-led strategy, other luxury watch brands are pushing in different directions. Some focus on innovation in design, new watch technology, or expanded direct-to-consumer engagement. Compared with luxury peers, which sometimes use scarcity plus design innovation to drive value, Rolex's approach can seem more conservative. Competitors may attract buyers who are looking for modern storytelling, bold creativity, or digital engagement, areas where traditional Rolex marketing is lighter. The shifting global luxury market also plays a role. Trends like a flight to quality, where buyers focus on trusted brands during economic uncertainty, can help Rolex maintain strength among wealthy buyers. But at the same time, changing consumer values, such as desires for sustainability, personal expression, or digital engagement, challenge the traditional scarcity-only model. Rolex's carefully controlled scarcity can feel less like strategy and more like gatekeeping to some people who crave broader luxury experiences. Rolex's vertical integration, its control over production, materials, and testing, has been a source of strength for decades. The brand develops many of its watch parts in-house and subjects every watch to rigorous testing before it leaves the factory. While this level of precision ensures high quality, it also limits how quickly Rolex can scale production to meet sudden spikes in demand, reinforcing scarcity as both a production reality and a market signal. Some critics argue that this tightly controlled strategy risks making Rolex less flexible or responsive to changing market conditions. When buyers begin to feel that scarcity is engineered more for hype than actual demand, it can weaken the emotional connection that once made Rolex irresistible. Others see the strategy as a strength that preserves value and brand trust over time. Either way, the way Rolex manages its brand reflects a belief that luxury must be enduring. If this breakdown changed how you think about luxury, let us know in the comments. In what other aspect has Rolex been declining? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into the hidden dynamics of wealth, status, and the brands desperately trying to capture both. Because in luxury, nothing is permanent.